If you remember fast-paced combat, over-the-top special moves, and a huge roster of playable characters, then you grew up playing the Budokai Tenkaichi Trilogy. And now, 17 years later, we finally get a follow-up in Sparking Zero. And so in this video, we're going to compare it to the original Tenkaichi games, highlighting the similarities, differences, and changes between them. There is a lot to cover, so let's get straight into it. We begin with a staple of Dragon Ball games, the intro cinematic. The original trilogy relied on pre-rendered 3D cutscenes with varying degrees of oiliness. Sparking Zero also starts with a 3D cinematic, but this one is miles ahead of the originals. The developers and animators have managed to capture the look and tone of the anime, and almost flawlessly transitioned it over to 3D. Ronnie Coleman Frieza, you will be missed. And they didn't just do this for the intro, this style and attention to detail is carried over to the combat itself. The only disappointment about the intro for me is the music. This was a prime opportunity to write a great new soundtrack for Hironobu Kageyama, like they did in Tenkaichi 3. Instead, we got the existing Dragon Ball Super intro theme. Naturally, the intro is followed by the in-game menus, and the original trilogy was renowned for its vibrant 2D menus that depicted the characters across a series of locations. Well, Sparking Zero takes this to the next level. The menus are seamlessly integrated into 3D environments that have you follow Goku around as he flies and teleports from location to location around the anime. Now, you're going to hear me say this a lot in this video, but I love the attention to detail here. From all the little things like Roshi secretly reading a dirty magazine, to the fact that this entire menu is set at the end of the Dragon Ball Super anime, and the campaign and all of its stories is a retelling seen through Whis' staff. So let's talk about the campaign. After all, it's always been the very first mode in all of the Tenkaichi games. The original trilogy had some of the most comprehensive campaigns in all Dragon Ball games. By the time we got to Tenkaichi 3, its campaign covered all of Z, many of the movies, along with key parts of both the original Dragon Ball and GT. Almost every battle that occurred in the Dragon Ball universe up to that point was featured in the original trilogy's campaign modes. And I'm glad to say that Sparking Zero has a campaign mode worthy of its predecessors. Instead of telling a linear story, you pick a specific character and play through their sections. This is similar to the original Budokai 3. And once again, Sparking Zero puts a lot of effort into its presentation. Instead of a typical menu that goes from one battle to the next, you navigate through this cosmic realm consisting of key locations from the story. The campaign covers the entirety of Z and Super, with a bit more emphasis on the latter, which kind of makes sense. At this point, the Z story has been retold about 200 times in video games. Meanwhile, the Super arcs are still relatively new. Yes, the original Dragon Ball, the Z movies, and the GT story arcs are missing, but this is a modern game after all, so I'm sure they will be included in future DLC. Now, the one downside of the original trilogy's campaigns were their presentation. Most of the time, characters would just exchange dialogue with very minimal movements before battle. Sparking Zero improves on this in a big way. Yes, due to the length of the campaign, there is still a lot of characters talking on the battlefield before fighting, but this time they are fully animated with much better camera angles. A lot of the key story moments are also presented via these dynamic scenes that mix fast-paced action with slow motion and stills. It's a cool looking effect, but you can tell the developers used it to cut down on doing a lot of the animation. My favorite new addition, however, is the ability to go into first-person mode with the character you're playing as. This means you can experience classic moments such as Raditz freaking out up close as he's about to get hit by the special beam cannon, the experience of being squished by Great Ape Vegeta, and of course Fat Cell about to explode.
Well, that's it, everybody. I'll see you all on the other side.
Hold on a sec, look, Videl isn't even looking at me, and Master Roshi just doesn't give a fuck. Yeah, I'm glad he's dead, good riddance. You know when you come back home late drunk and your parents are just standing there in the corridor giving you that look? Now, in addition to all the canon events, the original Tenkaichi Trilogy also had a few what-if stories. These provided some fun alternate reality battles and were quickly thrown together using existing assets. Sparking Zero takes the what-if concept to another level, integrating it straight into the campaign. The main story mode has several branching paths, which evolve into entire sagas with with their own custom cutscenes and full-on dialogue. I'm not really going to cover these because I want you to enjoy them for yourselves in case you haven't played the game yet, but needless to say, these are the best versions of the What If story in any Dragon Ball game. Now, cutscenes and branching paths aside, the main part of the campaign and the entire game is the combat. The original Tenkaichi games were some of the first mainstream arena fighters. Developer Spike wanted to capture the over-the-top combat of the series by setting the action across large maps with destructible elements. And as the series went on, the gameplay improved, adding and refining fast-paced combat techniques, dynamic movesets, and of course a large variety of over-the-top ultimate moves. And fans of the originals will be happy to know that Sparking Zero picks up right where Budokai Tenkaichi 3 left off. Now, I'm not going to go in too deep here because I'm very much a casual when it comes to Tenkaichi's combat mechanics. All I'll say is that the developers took everything that was fun about the old games and cranked it up to 11 on modern hardware. The combat is still as fast-paced as ever, it's super dynamic, and the series looks better than it ever has. Sparking Zero successfully completes Spike's original mission to recreate the over-the-top feel of the anime. I found myself powering up to use ultimate attacks just so I could enjoy watching them. Here are some comparisons of attacks from Tenkaichi 3 and Sparking Zero.
I hope you'll come back someday. See you later. Send me your energy! It's ready! You were incredible. Let's rematch someday. See you around.
Nowhere to run. Be gone! Sorry to make you wait. Hope you're at peace. Special beam cannon!
Don't bother!
I'll break you!
Simple tricks.
Now, you can't have all of those attacks without the characters there to execute them, and the Tenkaichi series was well known for its gigantic roster of characters. By the time we got to the third game, we had every character you could think of, and then some. Well, Sparking Zero does not disappoint. At launch, it has 182 characters and transformations. That's 20 more than Tenkaichi 3. Look, just Goku alone has 20 different versions. That's more than the entire roster of Super Dragon Ball Z for the PlayStation 2. Now, it's clear that at launch, Sparking Zero's main focus is on characters from Z, Super, and some of the movies. However, both the original Dragon Ball and GT are also represented with different forms and transformations. The sheer volume of characters which have been created in the 17 years since Tenkaichi 3 means that the roster no longer needs to rely on obscure characters from Dragon Ball like Devilman and Nam. Instead, their place has been filled with obscure characters from Dragon Ball Super, like that dog that spat in Gohan's face, or the happy lunch lady, or Frieza with no eyebrows. Again, I'm sure this roster will keep on growing via DLC and Season Pass content. Again, I want to point out the attention to detail. For example, the character select screen is set on whichever area you've decided to fight on. Not only that, but the camera will move to accommodate for the character's size. And just like the old games, you can either pick a set transformation or do it during battle. And these transformations just look amazing in Sparking Zero. Here are a few comparisons with the old games.
You'll pay for that! Okay, come on! This is the end for you!
No, show you something! This is the end of the line! Let the bloodbath commence!
Now, I can do an entire video talking about the character differences, their special moves, and unique little quirks, but I haven't actually had time to fully dive into each of them. So for now, I'm just going to mention the legend himself, Mr. Satan, as an example. As everybody knows, he can't canonically fly, so if you stop in mid-air, Mr. Hercule will start to fall. Also, every time he powers up, instead of an aura, he gets a spotlight and confetti. And naturally, his ultimate move is getting Boo to come and beat up his opponent. Now, back back in 2006, Budokai Tenkaichi 2 introduced character teams, and Sparking Zero retains this feature, letting you pick teams of up to 5 characters that you can switch during battle. Naturally, this opens up the possibility for some pretty unusual allies. Can someone name my new band in the comments? The original trilogy was well known for its variety of maps. Not only were they filled with destructible elements, but by the time we got to the third game, the maps had several variants. At launch, Sparking Zero has all the maps you'd expect from a Dragon Ball game, like the city, the World Tournament Arena, the Hyperbolic Time Chamber, Namek, and many more. Just like Tenkaichi 3, several maps have a day and night variant, and the environments all have various levels of destructibility. No, Zarbon, not Mr. Popo's jars! Ah, damn it. Now, the World Tournament mode has been a staple of Dragon Ball fighting games. The Tenkaichi Trilogy expanded it by adding some interesting variants. Sparking Zero builds on this by having 6 different tournament modes, each with their own rule set. Even the Yamcha games make a return.
Tackle the mighty Yamcha if you dare.
But if that's still not enough, then you can make your own tournament with your own rules. There is also a specific challenges and missions menu which allows you to unlock all sorts of rewards in exchange for doing in-game tasks. I just wish they gave Zeno a few more voice lines. And speaking of unlocking stuff, the shop is filled with all sorts of content like the ability items, cards, voices, background music, and unlockable characters. Ah, Frieza Force Soldier, my beloved, of course I'm gonna buy you first. Now, the original Budokai Tenkaichi Trilogy also had alternate costumes for many of the characters, and naturally, this has also been carried over to the new game with many of the costumes available at the store. Wow, Goku alone has 21 different costume variations. Unfortunately, Yamcha's outfits are a bit underrepresented at launch, because God knows that man loved his drip. Now, each of the old Tenkaichi games had one unique mode that put a different spin on regular combat. Sparking Zero continues this tradition with the Custom Battle mode. This mode allows you to experience battles across all sorts of weird and wacky scenarios, like the Saiyan trio auditioning for the Frieza Force. You can also make your own battles and upload them online for the rest of the community to enjoy. I tried making one called Android 19 Son because when I was a kid I thought that him and Chatsu were related. Dad, have you been drinking all night again? The classic trilogy also had a gallery mode where you could take a look at the characters' 3D models along with their bio. This mode reached its peak in Tenkaichi 3 with the inclusion of Chi-Chi, who would talk about the entire roster.
Hope his pervertedness doesn't power up. No doubt he's planning something evil.
How can Sparking Zero top that, you say? Well, by including commentary from Chi-Chi, Bulma, and Videl, who are having a group chat about the entire roster. You know, I never thought I'd see a girl talk button in Budokai Tenkaichi 4.
I don't care what Super Saiyan number it is. Shaving off your eyebrows is not a good look!
And after all these years, it's nice to see that Chi-Chi has finally embraced Piccolo into the family.
I don't forgive him for that time he kidnapped my son, but Gohan really took a liking to him.
And finally, let's talk about the multiplayer. The original games have gone on to become some of the most beloved multiplayer experiences amongst Dragon Ball fans. Who can forget the hours we spent fighting friends in over-the-top split-screen battles on our tiny bedroom televisions? Now, the good news is Sparking Zero retains local split-screen, and the combat still feels as fun as ever. The bad news is, as of launch, the only map you can play is the Hyperbolic Time Chamber. That's right, the simplest, emptiest map in the game. It feels like the developers knew they would get a lot of backlash if they didn't include this mode, but they ran out of time and just threw something together quickly. I really hope that other maps are included in the future, otherwise this is going to be a huge missed opportunity for us 2000s boomers. Now, the original Tenkaichi Trilogy were primarily local multiplayer games. The Wii version of the second and third games did have online, but it was very rudimental. Sparking Zero, on the other hand, is a modern fighting game, which means it's got online multiplayer built into it from the ground up. Now, I bought the deluxe edition with early access, so as of the making of this video, only a fraction of the player base is online. With that being said, I haven't experienced too many issues with the matchmaking. A few matches did have connection issues, but they were in the minority. The regular and team matches are really fun to play, but my personal favorite is the new online tournament mode. This is a really nice addition to the series, which has you fight through brackets and progressed to the final. And so there we have it, the original Budokai Trilogy compared to Sparking Zero. If there was one word to describe the original games, it would be volume. The Tenkaichi games are filled with content which played a big part in their legacy, and I'm glad to say that Sparking Zero has done justice to that legacy. In a time where sequels and remakes are filled with controversy or disappointment, it's so refreshing to get a game that pretty much gets everything right. Sure, there are elements missing, but it's still a modern game, so we should expect some games as service elements, but even in its launch state, I think Sparking Zero is filled with enough content to satisfy even the most hardcore Dragon Ball fans. And if this game gets anything close to the same level of support as Kakarot, then we're in for a fun time. But that's just my take. Please let me know your thoughts on Sparking Zero in the comments below. Is it everything you'd hoped it would be? And how does it stack up against the classic games? As always, thanks for watching. Please consider supporting me on Patreon, and a big thanks to my existing patrons. If you've enjoyed this video, then please remember to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.